Anno 117 Pax Romana is one of the most beautiful and ruthless Roman city builders ever made. You walk the marble streets, command vast armies, and build an empire that's as poetic in peace as it is brutal in war. But beneath all this beauty lies treachery, politics, trade, massive production chains, and some of the very best combat this series has ever seen. So we're going to be breaking down some of the best tips and tricks I wish I knew from the very start. It's going to help supercharge your understanding, strengthen your empire, and help you crush your enemies. There's going to be something here for everyone, so feel free to jump through the chapters. And a massive shout out and thanks to Ubisoft for gloriously sponsoring this video and introducing me to one of the best strategy games I've experienced in years. So jumping straight in, and we'll start off with the trading post. It's worth noting your trading post can be moved to any of the beach or ports on your starter island simply by clicking on it and then holding your left mouse button and you can move it. Alternatively, you can hit the relocate tool and click it that way. One thing you can do if you're being attacked by rebels is try run into another governor that you aren't at war with. And that way, by baiting it, you can then pretty much double team the same ship. This is very helpful in many scenarios. So if you can, try lead them into other governor ships and they will help. This way you can conquer some of these early skirmishes much easier. Even if they help chip some of the damage, generally it will always help you win the battles. One cool thing you can do, which that might have some defensive implications, is you can build these dirt roads onto the ocean and create a little bit of ports and some sort of choke points for ships to come in. But it also means you can kind of defend your trading post, where you could potentially try block ships away from your harbor. But it's just worth noting that you can build your roads onto the ocean and they extend out quite far, which allows you still to build all the various harbor buildings. Definitely something I'll be playing around with, yet to be seen if you can properly protect or add some kind of defense using this system. Cool thing that it does do is it does allow us to build fishing huts off the shore and various other production buildings. You won't be able to build them outside the trading post range. For example, I can't just throw it down here, but it means we could really utilize a lot of this space so much better. So let's build all these different fishing huts. We could do the same for the salt pond, but man, oh man, I wish I knew this sooner, as you can really utilize your harbor so differently. So definitely a good tip there, was for me at least. So there's a really cool trick we can use with the lavender grower, which gives us a +1 happiness. Now the trouble with the lavender is it takes 180 squares for its cultivation area. However, all we need to actually trigger the happiness within the area of effect, which is quite huge, is only 27 squares. So this is a really neat way you can implement a really nice looking building and field into your towns. It only takes about 47 squares on your grid, but it's a really sweet little tip to get extra happiness, as well as adding some excellent color and beauty to your towns. And just to show you can see it here in the island attributes. Under happiness, we go to +70. We can check the surrounding buildings in the active effects, and you can see lavender. Use the lavender growers to boost happiness. A really neat way to improve your efficiency in a well-developed city is unlocking the paved roads. Now, to unlock paved roads, the requirement is you've stored at least 5 tons of concrete, which generally you won't be able to access from any of the traders across any of the maps or NPCs, which normally means you have to get to tier 3 citizens to unlock the concrete mixer if you can't get it from anywhere on the map. But there is a really neat trick where we can unlock the paved road research super early, which is such a powerful strategy. And I'm going to go through in detail why, but how would we unlock it? Well, there is something we can unlock, and we can dump 30 tons of concrete straight into storage as soon as we get into the game. So we're going to click on this. We've got tons of concrete now in storage. And if we go to research, we can now unlock paved roads. So you'll be able to rush this either before or after you go for the research strategy, which we'll be covering soon. But we can unlock paved roads. But how do we get that sneaky little upgrade that we can use at the start of any game and only once? Well, we open to the statistics menu or just click on the icon here. We have the Hall of Fame, and this is where we're going to get this deadly upgrade, which is in tier 3. the Roman material pack. We go through the Hall of Fame in a little bit more detail and how you should best rush it, but I highly recommend unlocking the Roman material pack quite quickly, along with all the specialists, but we'll come to that in more detail soon. But now let's do a comparison of why paved roads are so incredibly useful, just like other previous titles. This can dramatically increase your overall efficiency. We're going to do a little test here just to highlight the difference. So the description states that allows for faster transports for goods, thus extending the reach of buildings as well. So a fair amount of implications here, but let's unpause both these buildings at the exact same time and see how much of a difference it is. So unpausing using Shift P, which unpauses all of the same production buildings, and we'll quickly speed this up, and you can see they're basically exactly aligned. Now here we go, we're off to the races, and we have the concrete road versus the dirt road, and we're going to see who's going to get there first. Obviously we know it's going to be the concrete, but by how much is it going to change? Now, if it also extends the reach, that will even have more downstream impacts in terms of efficiency. You can see that the concrete pathing completely annihilates the dirt road, which we expect. Now, you multiply this citywide, and you can see how you would have a very noticeable difference in efficiency. But here we go, the paved road, he's already made it back, and the dirt road is only halfway. So it is a huge efficiency gain. But what about the additional reach? Just before we test this, we were able to get 2 loads to the warehouse even before the dirt road could get 1 complete cycle. So it looks like in this example, it is doubling the efficiency, which is huge. When it comes to the next aspect is the range, how much further can you extend buildings that use road range? Check out how much further we get with paved roads compared to dirt roads. Both the oat farms are pretty much just in reach of the warehouse. So it looks like roughly 20 extra grid squares in range, which again is hard to understate how potent this simple upgrade really is in terms of how it will transform your city. What about when it comes to the public service buildings? Well, here's an excellent example. Here we have a market that can pretty much reach this whole section, which is a huge amount of reach. If we're moving it over to the old dirt roads, and it only just covers about half the same amount of distance. And just another example, what about one of the city watch buildings? Getting the most possible reach, we can affect 61 residents in this layout. The most we can get on the dirt road is 36. So just highlighting that the upgrade to pavers can completely transform how you structure and build a city. Make use of it, it's very potent and will allow for a much more flexible and forgiving layouts. Now the question becomes, how much is 30 tons of concrete going to get us in terms of paved road? Well, it will equal about 104 squares, but depending on what you want to do with this could still really boost your early game. You could either use it to replace some of the production zones, speeding them up dramatically, which would definitely increase and make it worthwhile. If you look at them zooming back and forth, if you did this early, it would have long-lasting impacts, especially if you created a zone that was really efficient and condensed. Alternatively, you could just try replace some key roads from your warehouse to certain buildings within your town, particularly ones going to the warehouse. So for instance, the warehouse to the spinner, which will make them zoom around so much quicker. So a few things to consider there. I think it's a really cool idea. Is when you place the farms down, one, it'll automatically have the field placement ready, which is excellent. But by default, it's only one little square at a time. If we press the middle mouse button, which is the wheel for me, you can actually change the size, which you can kind of draw your field. Adds a little bit more character to it. And you can also select a diagonal, so you get complete flexibility with how you want to lay your fields. You will notice as you play the game that some of these ornaments and various other bits and pieces are locked. And if you click on these, it's going to take you to the rewards menu, and you'll have a balance. Now, we can accrue the balance by completing challenges and leveling up our Ubisoft Connect account. But some pretty cool pieces in here. I really like the solar mosaic. Just to give you a quick little sneaky peek, we go into ornaments, into ground patterns. We've got the one we just unlocked, indicated by the gift icon. But if we place this around and zoom in, look how glorious that looks. And another cool trick you can do in Anno 117, just like various other versions, if we hit Control-Shift-R, we're going to appear as a little person and we can actually walk around. I would suggest doing it just at the slower speed so it doesn't look so crazy and clanky. But check this out. We can walk around the city and get amongst it. Now, it's still not 100% sort of sorted, but it's such a cool way to get down to the ground level and check out some of these amazingly, beautifully well-detailed Roman type structures. So really cool, something to note. So that is Control-Shift-R, as well as purchasing items from Ubisoft Connect account. Definitely something to check out. If you're wondering how to get to the Ubisoft Connect account, you can just go escape Ubisoft Connect, bing bada boom. It's just the middle controller button if you're on Xbox. And here we can see rewards and achievements. Tons of awesome achievements too. I believe these also unlock some of the points. So basically, the more you play and unlock various aspects of the game, you will eventually unlock all these little bits and pieces. One thing worth noting is that for your island prestige, many of the various ornaments give you a little tiny bit of prestige. So for example, right now, this island's prestige level is 725. Let's find an expensive statue, Celtic obelisk, noting that our prestige has just jumped. If we grab a ton of these and throw them down, keep a close eye on that prestige, boom, we've just made it dramatically higher. As long as we've got the cash, we could cover the island in prestige boosting ornaments. So something worth noting, it's cool that ornaments do add to your prestige. Obviously it just costs a ton of money if you wanted to do something like this, but you can really boost your prestige building ornaments. And when you hover over the prestige, the drop down will indicate how much you're getting from ornaments. So integrating as many ornaments as you can, increase your prestige just a little bit. You need a ton of them to make it very worth noting, but could be enough to get you over the edge, particularly when it comes to diplomacy and you have certain governors that have prestige as a cornerstone in terms of making any kind of progress with diplomatic ties. So it could be a little trick to boost by just throwing down a ton of ornaments. A cool feature that we have in Anno 17 is that we can place down the different type of ground patterns. And it's simple, I know, but we can now place all the various different ornaments on top of these ground patterns. And so easily change it just very quickly by clicking on one little tab, and then it will automatically update the whole pattern to that new ground formation. It's just a super clean and easy way to do things now. And that's the same for meadows, which if you played Anno 1800, this is a big deal. Just worth noting because it's a good change. One little tip you can do with fires when it hits your village is obviously you won't be able to destroy some of the buildings close by, or in some cases you can. Sometimes what you can do, depending on a few different things, is you can delete and demolish buildings around fires if you're quick enough. Another thing you can do is you can relocate the building away from the fire. This will depend on a few things, settings and whatnot, but it's something you can achieve. So here's a quick example of using the relocate. So if we wanted to quickly relocate some of these buildings, we can, and it'll just pick all the ones that aren't on fire. So this can be like a really handy little nifty trick just to avoid the fire spreading where possible. One little way to mitigate and stop the spread of fire. After that, you can just relocate all the houses back to where they were, kind of like putting a little puzzle back together, but a very nice trick to avoid devastating fires. Another really helpful handy tip in terms of potentially saving workforce costs and various other aspects is pausing buildings when you no longer need so much production, or if you just want to pause them altogether, you can hit Shift P and that will take all, in this instance, woodcutters on this province and pause them. So as an example, woodcutters are all paused, giving us extra workforce. If we unpause them, it goes down to 7. So you kind of have like a province global pause by using Shift P. Otherwise, if you just hover over them, you can do it individually by clicking this button here that's going to pause them, or just press P as the shortcut to pause an individual building. It's an extremely good way to turn off and on various buildings in the early game, and you can really boost your efficiency and progress by using this kind of technique. And if you're ever familiar with Manor Lords, kind of think of it as like you're moving your workforce from building to building depending on the season. It's kind of the same principle. It can really help boost your early game. It's worth noting you can only pause your production chain buildings. Things like the market, taverns, and most buildings in other categories can't be paused, which includes your warehouses. One thing I like to do if I'm struggling to see where there's space to build, I'll go into the ornaments. I'll fill the ground with a different pattern. For instance, you could use hard earth, muddy ground, but basically any of these, find a space and then you just cover your base with it, just at least initially, as it helps, at least for me, identify areas where I can be placing things, as it can break up the coloration of the dirt roads, which would eventually replace to paths anyway. Not something practically helpful for everyone, but just something I like to do. When it comes to building bridges, it's important to understand that bridges cost scale with their length. So the shorter the bridge, the cheaper. So plenty of road networks, potentially before placing long bridges. So I'll try to give you an example here. Here you have one bridge costing 78 coin and 8 wood. If we were to build a bridge across this wider gap here, you'll see the increased cost. This time it's 105 and 10 lumber for a small efficiency gain. So particularly in early game, this can definitely save you some much needed coin just by trying to pick the narrowest part of the river systems to build bridges. Something I didn't understand, so I thought it was worthwhile explaining, is when you build ships, we can hover over and see how much health. This one has 1000. Now, what I didn't realize is that the ship's health scales partially with the workforce. So for instance, we've been building all these ships and we can see that they cost, under the maintenance cost, a various amount of workforce. If we go and do the unthinkable and just start deleting a bunch of buildings from our settlement, and if we click on a ship again and go down to the bottom, we can see the workforce available is 18. Workforce needed for this ship is 23. After removing all the population, you'll note that the health will decrease. And the only way to get your ships back to full health is if you have the population to sustain them. This can depend on your settings within your sandbox mode, but something to be mindful of. Your low population will weaken your navy. Ship's health will scale partially with workforce. So basically just maintain a strong workforce always to support your fleet, and that will ensure your fleet's durability is always at its best. If you played the demo, a few of the structures have reverted back to how they were in previous Anno titles. For instance, the public service buildings, or that category, are now road ranged again. So your market, your tavern, wells, latrine, city watch, these are all road ranged. It's very important about how you lay out your residence. So as an example, our marketplace has full coverage of all the houses in this little section here. Same for the tavern. However, if we go and try to replicate this in a design where we haven't separated the buildings via intersecting roads, we do have a road in the middle, but without the breaks in the intersecting roads, it means all the public service buildings are going to influence a much shorter range of residents because of how we've designed the streets and roads. Many of you are familiar with this concept from Anno 18 and previous titles, but we have a quick look here and we simply add a intersection here. Boom, look at that reach. We can cover all these houses. So implementing big blocky designs like this are no longer any good. In the demo, it was much better to do this because markets were area effect bound. But now pretty much all public service buildings, that category is road range again. Now, when it comes to production buildings, they still work with an area of effect attribute. So let's take the spinner. We go to put the spinner down. We can see the green arrows that we've covered before are the buildings that are being affected, which will generate the income +1. But what does the green moldy road represent? Well, that's going to be your warehouse road range. So when placing this production building, if we throw down a warehouse here, should be just out of range, as we can see indicated by the green moldy road. And we can clearly see that as expected due to the warehouse not in range, as it just misses it. So now if we scoot this warehouse over just slightly, it's in range. So it's important to understand those distinctions because the green road means different things on different building categories. But quite simply, public service, road range, utilize grid patterns with breaks in the road. Fashion, production buildings, work on an area of effect attribute, and still need the warehouse road range, which will be always indicated in green for these. Just trying to drive that home because it's fairly important. So just keep in mind that also applies to all your city watch buildings. It is road ranged, not area of effect. This is a new functionality in Anno 17 and it is glorious. We can now pause and construct and lay out our base to our heart's content while the game's paused so nothing is happening. You can turn on planning mode and you can almost like completely some of your earlier layouts. But this will be, I imagine, quite potent, particularly against the very difficult AIs. it will give you a little bit of a chance to try keep up with their insane speed. But yeah, not really a tip, but it's just really handy to know about this new feature. While we're talking about the UI, we also have the time of day, which we can control. Just know that it is purely cosmetic. We can turn it on and off in terms of having a realistic day and night cycle, or we just have it off and set to whatever time of day we like. So great for taking screenshots, or if you like a certain more moodier nighttime complexion, that is at the tip of your fingertips. Another cool little thing for those that are more new to Anno, down in the bottom corner here indicates the wind direction. So at the moment we can see if we click on a ship, it's pointing, let's say north, and it's going to have this icon appear and shift as the winds change direction. Just a really handy little piece of UI knowledge there. So time your attacks and voyages when the wind is in your favor where possible. And why is it so important to understand why we want to travel towards the direction where the wind or where this icon is facing? If you click on a ship and you go into the active effects, we can see the tacking where the movement speed is plus 5%. So the ships will always be generally much faster when traveling in the same direction of the wind. And you can see with the unfavorable wind impact, we lose about 20% of our speed when we're traveling against the wind. So that's why it's always handy to have this icon available, easy to see, something I didn't realize when I started playing Anno games. Something that is probably obvious to many existing players, but when it comes to upgrading the roads, from your dirt roads to your pavers, you can build over the dirt roads, but there's a really quick way to upgrade entire sections of your town. If we select the upgrade tool, click and drag, it's going to upgrade all the roads selected in an instant. Small little tip for new players, definitely saves you a lot of time. And you probably know this one already, but that same method applies to all the buildings. We can just click and drag with the upgrade tool and mass upgrade. Now, building on from that, there are some shortcut keys I just want to cover that can make upgrading even more efficient. If we go into controls down the very bottom, we can do mass upgrades. So what we can do is we can select one residence and we can do a mass upgrade of this whole province or region. With my current controls, I can technically do it with F7 or F9. I'll need someone to chime in on the comments, but my guess is if you can have the two different types of population on the same island with different residents, maybe that is the difference between regional mass upgrade and Roman mass upgrade shortcuts, because I'm not 100% sure what the difference is just yet. But what I do want to show you is just how we can very simply and quickly upgrade in mass with one click of a button. Now, if you are going to do this, just remember, I don't believe there is any mass downgrade. So if you do perform this upgrade, it can throw your population out of whack. So you probably want to only use this in certain scenarios. But what we can do is we can click on a residence. And because I've selected a tier 1 residence, it's going to upgrade all tier 1 to tier 2. Pretty much region wide. So let's go ahead. We're going to select this residence and we're going to hit F9. Keeping in mind, that's the Roman residence mass upgrade. We can also use the regional mass upgrade to perform the same action, but it's pretty amazing. We're going to hit F9 and the game will kind of lag for a little bit, but boom, we've just upgraded so many residents all within a click of a button. So the only limit to it will be the resources required for the upgrade, but it's still a really sweet little addition. And we can do that with any tier of residents. Here we have tier 2, F9, and you'll see region-wide they can be upgraded. And just for the sake of hitting F7, you'll see that it performs the same function, but definitely worth mentioning because there could be some excellent use cases. After doing some more testing with the mass upgrade, it actually extends beyond just the residence, which is going to be extremely helpful, particularly I could see for when we are setting up something like defenses or when we're using the planning mode. We can tick that, say we build a bunch of these guys over here. Now, normally if we wanted to upgrade all these buildings at the same time, we'd go into the upgrade tool, click and drag, and yet you can cover it quite a lot. You can do it many different ways and cover the whole map, but that's way less efficient. What we can do now is select one of these warehouses, hit F9, and it's going to mass upgrade all these structures. For me, this is exciting. I only just discovered this. So just going through it again is assuming you have all the materials. We have a bunch of defenses spread out. We're going to click on the tower, press F9. It's going to build all the towers. Click on the palisade, hit F9, all upgraded. And here we have some of the aqueducts, which you can see spread all over the map. I'm just going to click on one now and hit F9. It's going to build as much as it can with the resources I had. Hit it again, and we've completed them all across the whole map. Seems if I hit F7, it does the exact same function, but a really brilliant functionality for mass upgrading. all the various buildings, structures within the game. If you do want to try Mass Downgrade, there's one way we can do it, which does state down here, but if you hold Alt, click and drag, so whatever building you had selected will be picked up, and then you could downgrade. Keep in mind, it's going to refund all those resources, and if you've already hit the limit of your storage, those resources will cease to exist. So you probably only want to downgrade a few at a time just so you don't lose all the resources. But there's definitely many scenarios where your population's gone out of whack and you will need to downgrade a bunch of residents. From my testing, I couldn't figure out any way to mass downgrade with a click of a button, but it's definitely something you don't need to do all that much. So one thing you'll probably catch yourself doing is trying to expand and build tons of residents really quickly. But that also comes at the expense of expanding more and more production lines. Ultimately, the objective is in the early to mid game is using all the various buildings that are going to increase your residents' population and trying to maintain a small amount of residents, but the density can be quite extreme. You can get away with quite a small amount of residents, but you can really maximize the density. For instance, your basic residents, we have 5 workforce and 4 population. And it's important to distinguish between population and workforce, which really ties in with your city status, which adds into this density and why you don't want to expand crazy fast and build tons and tons of residents. You want to try keep it compact and work within a small but cleverly designed town where you can maximize and use buildings early on like the porridge +2 population, fishing hut, got your bread, and many other buildings that are going to help you increase the density within a small radius. So an example, we got 4 population being added. Think of that as your men, women, children, everyone that lives within this building, which will add to the overall city status. And as this city and status increases, it will also unlock the various different attributes. So for instance, when you're a tiny little outpost, you got only one thing to worry about, which will come about once we've reached a population of over 200, which if we wanted to, would have to build a ton of houses. But instead of doing that, we can just build porridge and some oats. Then we're going to see our population shoot to the moon, which if we then throw in a tavern, and that will shoot up the population. And this is just an example of how expanding really fast isn't really the way to go. You want to be using the buildings to increase population, increase the density, and not cover too much radius, which will keep your materials required. And that's because, say, something like the fishing hut, the sardines need is per resident building, not how many people exist within each resident. So for instance, we could have 20 people in this building, but it's not actually going to uptick the required amount of sardines we need for this production chain. But I'll come to this in a little bit more detail because it is a cool thing to understand. But quite simply, focus on smaller builds. Then as you grow, you expand, you get much larger mid to late game. Now, one of the most important and overpowered buildings is going to be your governor villa. If the enemies destroy this building, Saranara to that province. And more importantly, it's always recommended to no matter how small of the island and what you're doing on it, to build a governor villa, because if you don't have one and your enemy attacks your trading post and destroys it, you will lose control of the province. However, once you have a governor building, they can destroy your trading post and you won't lose the island. But one of the biggest reasons the governor building is so important is because we can put specialists that if you unlock some of the legendary specialists, they provide an incredible boost to your population, workforce, coin, or any of the various attributes. It will all depend on which one you need and for what scenario. Now, if you're wondering where to get all the various different types of agents, you'll be able to find them at the traders, which are indicated as white on the map. So depending on the trader, you would click on their main building and you'd see goods, you'd hit items, and then every 10 minutes you get a set of new or different specialists. So I think there is common, rare, and then epic, ranging anywhere from 2k for captains that you'd attach on your ships all the way to these epics, which can cost 100,000 coin depending on a few different factors. But if you are looking to purchase, I think at the moment there's over 67 specialists. So there's a huge range. Hopefully down the track, I'll be able to make a video going through each and every one. Now, to get some of the legendaries, all you need to do is play the game. And as you do, you gain fame points. And you can spend those within the Hall of Fame. And basically, this is like a progression system. It's not a battle pass, season pass, or anything like that. It's just a natural progression within the game. Playing the campaign, as well as the sandbox mode, you will gain fame points by completing various different accolades. So for instance, I've completed this one here, have a specialist in a villa. Very simple one, but I got 15 fame for it. So think of these as sort of just like your challenges that you can complete over time. They will give you fame points. And then you can spend your fame on these juicy legendary specialists. Now, as you unlock various items, always go for the most beneficial. So for instance, at tier 1, unlock your specialists, unlock the woodland rebirth. This is super handy. It allows you to place woodcutters anywhere and it'll always have 100% efficiency, but prioritize ones that will actually help you. Ornaments, don't worry about the skins. And I say that because as you spend your fame points, it will allow you to unlock the next stage. So for instance, I'm in tier 1. If I want to unlock tier 2, I have to spend a certain amount of fame points. Then I can go into tier 2, start unlocking things. And again, you're trying to focus in on the most important things. Now keep in mind, there is 2 different regions for Hall of Fame. But the other game-changing aspect to unlocking some of these various items, for instance, we can unlock Neptune, Woodland Rebirth. But not only does it unlock these 2 in your research tree, it also opens up so many different variables of how you want to use your research tree. Because if we did not have the Woodland Rebirth, all these other various items attached to this fork in the research would be locked. So you'd have to go through and unlock all these various things before you could even reach Woodland Rebirth. And you can see that the same here for the macro hauling. And you can see we've already researched Cult of Mercury, which has opened up so many different potential options to start our research in many unique ways. It's a really interesting feature that really does transform how we interact with the research tree and potential strategies. But here we are, we've unlocked Mercury in the Hall of Fame, and because of that, every time we start a game, we've already got it researched. So whether it's Albion or Latium, aim for the highest values, which are your specialists, research items, your gold unlocks, and then at the very end, maybe your skins. Really cool system. I like this. There are so many challenges and some very interesting scenarios to cover. So be mindful of that. But in this case, if we unequipped all these governors, the stats will drop dramatically. We're on roughly 300 coin. If we add this specialist, it's going to increase it by roughly 300. And then if we continue to put the remaining of all the specialists, it's going to help so many different stats. But that's why trying to maximize most amount of residents and buildings, depending on what specialist you're running, in a circle like this is a very potent way to lay out your base, trying to maximize what you can get from your specialists. And you can pretty much build unlimited amount of little mini governor buildings. These are just like extensions to the governor building as you can build them. They're called villas, but you can also just pop in agents in them as well. So if I unclick one here, I can put one in here and bing, bada, boom. Just need to get a row towards it. And there we go. It would impact some buildings. But the main thing is you can't have it overlap any of the other villas or governor building. But what's really important and a really cool trick is you can stack various specialist abilities over buildings that can be impacted by it. Let's say, for example, the theater, we can have it overlap the governor villa and a normal villa. And if I had various specialists that impacted or boost its attributes, you can make some very potent strategical decisions using a method like this. Overlapping, it can only generally impact 1 or 2 buildings because of how the area circles are, but just something worth noting. A tip to dramatically speed up your research speed in the early game is once you've thrown down your Grammaticus, you've unlocked your research tree, we want to unlock Sowing circles. This gives a +1 knowledge in the area of effect. So from the area of effect and specialist, at the moment we're sitting at 108. We have the 2 spinners pretty much giving close to 100% coverage of this area. Here we have the knowledge. This is it before. So the island total is 235 with the area of effect and specialist at 135. We go into research, we hit trading post improvements, Sowing circles, and you can see it's just been researched and we get a +87, which when you scale it over more densely populated areas where you've built up the population within some of these buildings to higher numbers, it really does make a big difference. So to speed up the research speed early game even quicker, what we can do is we can research the cult of Minerva. This Roman goddess of wisdom, justice, and victory will help increase our knowledge, as this is sort of the deity focused on knowledge. So what we're going to do is we'd go market forces, watchtowers, Minerva. Not only do we get the increased production on various clothing items, including the spinner, completing the research and then aligning our religion to Minerva, setting her as our patron. Boom. And what we're aiming for is this divine wisdom. It's going to give an additional knowledge from all residents. We go from +1, +3, +5 to +7. So you can see how this is going to scale dramatically by the end game, and not to mention the industrial efficiencies that we'll be gaining. So now we've hit that sweet 250 required devotion with our population, which gives us a +165 knowledge, plus the spinner. And as you can see, this is just a quick put together little town. And with the scaling effect, this is going to be a huge boost to the late game. So if you do want to focus on unlocking research a lot quicker throughout your game, this could be one of the good strategies to really boost and maximize unlocking a lot more research items much quicker. Not to mention, if you throw in a few specialists as well, it does really scale nicely. Let's keep moving. In Anno 1800, if you were in a sandbox mode, you'd be able to add in AI. You'd have to do it using a mod. In this scenario, I've gone in, created a game. I have no other governors. It's just me and this emperor. But what we can do in the diplomacy window, we can hover our cursor over these icons. One here is for pirates. One here is for another governor. We can click ask a new governor to join the region. So we're going to click on this. Then we can go into either inviting our friends, which they can join at any point, which is pretty mind-blowing, or we can go add governor, and we can go in and select whichever governor we want. In fact, we'll add a governor for each slot. Then we just need to hit the X in the top right, and boom, there they are. We've got them all interactive now, and we can also then go ahead and add and configure some of the game content. Most importantly, we can go add pirates to the game world that has already been up and running. The only thing that we can't change, which we'll need to be considerate of when we set up our game, is that we do have all the pirate settings exactly how we would want them if we did want to add them in, because at the moment we can only set dormant and active. We won't be able to adjust the difficulty. But if you've got that all set before you go in, this is now a great opportunity to add pirates wherever you're up to within the game by setting them from dormant to active. Beyond this, we can even change some of the balancing of the game to reduce or increase its difficulty. So pretty unreal flexibility here, all built within the game, no mods required. You won't be able to change any of the stuff in game start, but we still have a lot of flexibility. So hit confirm. Now we have the 2 pirates added, and we have a complete sandbox mode with AIs starting with a huge leg up. It's just great to see this kind of flexibility within the game. The thing I did want to quickly touch on is if we did want to play with our friends or get them to come join a game, you can do multiplayer in both the campaign and sandbox mode, which is the first time I think in any Anno game, playing the campaign with your mates. Awesome. And they have some new sort of strange setups. You can do a co-op where you play as one single governor or you play as separate governors. Cool thing is, if you hit this live game, the live saves are stored in the cloud and do not retain the history, so only the latest state is retained. Because of that, any player within the game can continue that save at a later time. You don't all need to be online for the game to progress. If any player is playing, others can join by loading into the latest save. No need for a synchronous session start. So it's pretty huge. There's a lot of flexibility with this new system. There's also cross-play between consoles and PC. The only limitation will be the multiplayer speed setting. You won't be able to fast forward the game, so you will be playing in real time. The fast forward is only available in single player modes. It's also worth noting there is no inbuilt voice chat, and if you're using mods, all players must have the mods downloaded. But just wanted to touch on that because it's a huge change. Multiplayer just got that much better with Anno in this edition. Very quick little tip. If you're using the copy function, let's say we're just copying this path and we want to rotate it, we would just have to click the middle mouse button, which is generally, for me at least, it's the wheel button. So clicking that down will rotate. Alternatively, you can set this function to a key command in the settings, but very handy to know about. That's all the tips and tricks for now. There is so much to this game, and I look forward to peeling back and providing lots of guides, tutorials, playthroughs. But if you do find any cool tips and tricks, do let me know in the comments. And thanks once again, Ubisoft, for sponsoring this video. But that's it from me for now. Thanks very much. Peace.